It happened. Thomas Harper just committed
Oh.
to Notre Dame, the Oklahoma State DB. So just go ahead and quickly say that, and then I'm going to publish the story.
All right. So I was like, wait.
We knew it was going to happen around 1. I just wasn't sure it was going to happen like.
So he actually did it on time. That's awesome. Okay.
Yes.
Wasn't expecting that. So safety from Oklahoma State.
Safety nickel.
Yeah, safety nickel. That's a good point. So he was on campus this last couple of days, right? And he has decided to pledge his allegiance to Notre Dame, and that is official as of 1:05 p.m. And, of course, we are going to talk about him and what his film looks like and how he can help Notre Dame. Thomas Harper is his name. He is, again, a safety / nickel, a place where Notre Dame needed a body, in my opinion. And obviously we're going to talk about that. But that's an exciting get for Notre Dame. I know you've dove into the film a little bit more than I have at this point. But
and I'll have more. I'll have more on him, Vince. But let me just kind of finish putting this up here real quick.
No, you're good.
I can't talk and type at the same time.
No, you're good. So I think it is exciting for Notre Dame because that is a spot of need. And that is a spot from a depth chart standpoint that they needed to bring in some experience.
Yeah, here's the intriguing thing about him, Vince. So number one, he's a guy that's going to come in and compete for jobs. He's not like this isn't like getting Sam Hartman, right? Meaning you've got this really established, 4-year starter or whatever the kind of guy, but he's been a 4-year player at Oklahoma State. So technically he should be done. He's in a very similar situation to what Tariq Bracy was last year in that he played as a freshman. He was part of the 2019 class at Oklahoma State, played as a freshman, played in 7 games, at least 7 games every year of his career. So he never took a red shirt. But because of the 2020 COVID year, he has a 5th year of eligibility remaining.
Yep.
So, he's got a good chunk of experience. Missed part of this season with a bit of a shoulder injury. I did some research on that, talked to some sources. Sounds like it was nothing major. And he's part of a kind of a mass exodus from the Oklahoma State program, which is really kind of sad and disappointing, to be honest with you. We're seeing this from some of these programs that aren't the blue bloods of college football, but it is what it is. But he's a unique player, Vince, because in his career, he's played a lot of nickel, like the slot nickel spot that Tariq Bracy has played. But he's more of a safety in that regard. Like he can play, he's a cover guy, but he's more of a safety. He's also played some free safety, some alley safety, some box safety during his career as well. And he's played a little bit more nickel throughout his career, played a lot more nickel this year than he did in the past, where he was a little bit more split in snaps in the past. So the interesting thing about him, Vince, is you're getting a guy that is kind of a 2 birds with 1 stone type of player in that he can play the spot that Brandon Joseph departed. He can provide depth at safety in the base defense, and then he can play nickel in the nickel defense.
Right.
And so he kind of gives you depth at 2 positions with 1 scholarship. Now, obviously, when they're in the nickel, if he is the starting nickel, then you're not going to play him at safety if you're going to spend the whole game in nickel. But it does give you that option because Notre Dame's going to play in their base defense a decent amount this year, Vince, that it gives you sort of an opportunity to have a guy that's going to play some nickel as well. So, but can also play safety in the base defense, I mean. So it makes a good pickup. I'll dive more into the film. What I've seen so far, Vince, I see a kid that's got good size for the position. He's listed at 5'11". He's a $108, listed at 5'11". I think 180 is what I saw. Pretty cut up kid, pretty ripped up kid. Good tackler. That's the first thing that stands out. He's a really good open field tackler, in my opinion. And he's a guy that brings a little bit more physicality to the position. Now, the thing about Tariq Bracy, just so people understand where I'm coming from, Tariq Bracy was a more than willing tackler, especially this past year. I mean, he was really willing, but he's undersized. And there's only so much you can do when you're as thin and skinny as Tariq Bracy is. So it's not that Tariq wasn't a good tackler or a willing tackler. What this is more about to me, Vince, is a guy that brings just a little bit more beef to the position. Even though the listed weight isn't that much better, he just brings a little bit more thickness to the position, in my opinion. A little bit more solid play. He's been a solid tackler throughout his career, not a lights out, light you up guy, but a really good in space tackler, in my opinion. So that's important for that nickel position. It's also important for safety. Brings good coverage ability. So the last 2 years, this year he gave up 9.7 yards per attempt, and he played mostly in the slot as a nickel. Now, Tariq Bracy in that position for Notre Dame gave up 10.6 yards per attempt. You and I would both agree, and I would hope everyone in the chat would agree, that Tariq Bracy was really good for Notre Dame this year. He was a really good football player. So his 10.6 yards per attempt is pretty good. And this kid gave up about a full yard less. Last year in 11 games last season, Vince, he only allowed 5.8 yards per attempt allowed. So, he brings some good coverage ability to that position. And that's obviously something that they're looking for, because that was a concern, because you got like Jaden Mickey and some other guys, but there's like a natural nickel coming back. There's not a natural slot guy coming back.
Right.
And my hope, I'll be honest with you, my hope is that he comes in and locks down the slot nickel position. And here's why. Because if he locks down the slot nickel position, and you've got Jaden Mickey, Cam Hart, and Benjamin Morrison outside, and then Chance Tucker emerges, and I'm going to have something on Chance Tucker here soon on irishbreakdown.com, then there's even more reason to move Clarence Lewis to safety, which is something I don't think the Notre Dame coaching staff is really thinking about doing right now. I think they're going to need to be forced to do that by other guys stepping up. And I think this addition could be one of those things that forces them to say, hey, look, this kid's a slot. We're going to play Ohio State, USC, Clemson, Duke. A lot of the teams the best teams Notre Dame is going to play this year are going to spread it out teams. Pitt's going to look a lot like what Boston Colleges looked like, right? So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for nickel there. So you look at your schedule, Vince. The guy at Sacramento State that is now the head coach of Stanford, the way that they run their offense, much more of a nickel need for there, as opposed to where they were two tight ends and big personnel in the past. So your schedule is going to require a lot more nickel from your defense, which means this kid will play more. And if this kid earns that job, you're going to need to have a third safety working in there, and potentially a fourth safety. My hope is that they decide to move Clarence Lewis back to safety. Is my hope.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that's the plan right now, but this maybe could help with that, in my opinion, Vince.
No, I love the positional flexibility with this kid. Obviously, he brings experience to the secondary. I mean, there's still a young secondary overall. I mean, if you think about it,
playing
Cam
experience,
Hart, playing experience-wise. And Cam Hart's your most experienced guy coming back. But I like bringing more experience, and I have no problem with that. His positional flexibility is key. I don't know that Jaden Mickey is a natural nickel, kind of what you hinted at, right? And I love the kid. I think he can play and be very good with this defense. I just don't know that he's a natural nickel. So is he the guy that you want starting in that spot? Right. I don't know. Maybe he takes that on in the offseason.
He's not a natural nickel because he's never done it. So we don't know if he can transition there or not.
No, that's a good point. And, he struggled this year, but he's a true freshman who'd never played the position. So I think the expectations needed to be, tampered down a little bit. Based on his history at the position, right? So I like this, bringing in some experience. I like your ideas about him at nickel. I think physically he fits that role a lot better. And then it allows Jaden Mickey to rotate in on the outside as opposed to the inside. Now, Jaden Mickey could also be a kid who cross-trains at, regular corner and nickel. I have no problem with that. You're going to have to move some guys around. But even this year, they started out in the nickel. That was basically their base defense this year, was the nickel. I mean, more often than not. And so that's going to be a situation where I like it. I like the positional flexibility. I like the fact that he's coming in. He's got 4 years of experience. 4 years of experience. Nobody else on this defense in the secondary has 4 years of experience. And now you're looking at a potential starting lineup of Benjamin Morrison, Cam Hart on the outside. You got this kid on the inside at nickel. Then you've got Xavier Watts in the back. And then whoever they have at safety, at the other safety, whether it's Ramon Henderson, whether it's another kid that they're going to bring in from the transfer portal, whatever the case may be, I like where this secondary is. This secondary a year ago was a giant question mark going into the season. It's not a giant question mark anymore. It's arguably the position group on the defense that you have the most excitement about, that you have the most confidence in. At least I do. This is a lockdown secondary at the moment, especially if they can, move Clarence Lewis. I would love to see a starting lineup of Morrison, Watts, Lewis, Hart, and then you bring in Thomas Harper at the nickel. That's a pretty formidable group, if you ask me. And that's a group that I can get on board with from a secondary situation. So this is an exciting group. I think the addition of Harper not only makes you better from an on-field perspective, but from an experience perspective,